Hi, Matthew McIver from Iowa Stage Theater Company, and I am here with Kathy Pingel, the director of Girls Weekend 2, which opens April 29th and runs through the 15th of May. And we are very, very excited to have her up here. Um, Kathy, just to start with, give a little bit of your background. I mean, you currently are in sunnier climes right now, but you served a good bit of time here in Des Moines, didn't you?
Right. So I came to Des Moines about the time that the Kate Goldman Children's Theater was opening and taught and directed there for many years, and then took a
At
little bit
the
of a hiatus
at the Des Moines Community Playhouse, right?
at at the Des Moines Community Playhouse, and then came back to be the education director and the artistic director of the Kate Goldman Children's Theater. Then after retirement, I just kind of flitted all around the country directing and teaching and things like that. But the opportunity came to come back to Iowa, and as you know, Iowa is a strong siren call. So
It
the
is.
opportunity to direct at Iowa Stage for the first time, to work with Karen again, and to just visit with friends and neighbors—that's a great opportunity.
And you had worked on Karen's first play, isn't that right?
Right, that's right. Just before I left, I directed Girls Weekend, and an original script. And I thought it was very nervy of Karen to make her first script a farce, because a farce has to be very intricately layered in order for there to be, surprise on the audience's part and for the comedy to be there. But she was bold, and I was bold, and it was a hit.
And Girls Weekend was at the Des Moines Community Playhouse, the first play. Let's talk about that for just a second because it was a wonderful production, hugely enjoyable. Audiences loved it. When you watch the clips online, you can hear the laughter. You can hear belly laughs, like solid belly laughs from people. It's a really funny show. But as you mentioned, you know, I think that probably among theater people, it's no secret that in some ways comedy is harder than tragedy. In some ways, much more technical than tragedy. And farce, as you just alluded to, is possibly the most technical of all comedy. I would say potentially, and for my money, I think farce is the most technical kind of theater except for musicals. Which so without an orchestra or singing and dancing, I think farce is probably the most technically challenging of all kinds of theater. Does that something you would agree, disagree with, and what do you
No,
think makes it so hard?
I absolutely agree, because it isn't just in the wording, although the
Mhm.
words have to be funny, the jokes have to be
Yeah.
tight. There's a great physicality to it, and there's almost a sense that the characters, or the actors anyway, are showing off their physical prowess as well as showing off what they can do with, a tightly woven joke. And so we have to be really bold. And if you liken it to musical theater and choreography, it has to be so smooth. The physical jokes have to be so smooth that it seems to arise from the action, and that they absolutely know what they're doing, to the point where the audience can laugh without seeing the joke coming from a mile away.
Right. So there's the coordination, that surprise, all of that's incredibly intricate and requires a lot out of performers. Now, when you did the original Girls Weekend, it was a cast of about eight or so. Is that
Right, right.
and they were all local performers, right? All Des Moines area performers.
Yes, but the interesting thing is that I've shown clips and portions of the
Mhm.
play to to people who are learning adjudication skills. So they
Mhm.
want to watch a play and then respond to it. And most frequently, what they say to me is, "Well, this is not fair. These are professional actors." And I said, "Well, no, these are volunteer actors just like you. It's just that they have a certain skill set. And so
Yes.
let's talk about that." You're right, right. But
Yeah.
I've directed now overseas. I've directed from coast to coast, and I think that the finest actors are here in Des Moines.
Oh, well, we love that. There's a pull quote. Um,
Mhm.
and obviously, in a sequel, you've got the return of many, or if not all, of the characters from the original. How many of the cast were you able to get back?
100%. And I think that's a lot to do with their relationship with one another. They trust one another. they have faith that they're all going to put their 100% towards the product. They're not pulling anybody along. And they also now know the genre well enough to be able to collaborate with me to pull things together. So it's not just my ideation, it's theirs and their input as well. So I serve as, I lay it all out on the floor, and then we all contribute to what the final picture is. And Karen Schaeffer, playwright, is also there every step of the way to take suggestions, to say yes or no, and then to help tighten up things. And I keep on using the words tighten up. I mean, a farce cannot have any dead air or any dead space. It really has to clip along because it's based all on surprise.
Right.
Right.
And those gears have to mesh together like clockwork. I mean, it's just everything has to fit right within everything else. Yeah, absolutely. Karen, I'm just quick moment. I think we might have had a little bit of a glitch, and I'm not sure if it was on my end or not, but could you just start again, tell me again that quick answer of how many of the cast you got back, in case we had a glitch in the stream?
100% of people came back, and my point was that I think they came back because it's fun, but it's challenging, and they trust one another. They enjoy one another's company. And so in the 8 years since Girls Weekend, the original, came up, in those 8 years, people have had babies, people have, lived through COVID, people have traveled. And so we're all different, and yet we're ready to see these characters in a brand new light.
They look remarkably similar, I have to say. Most of them look remarkably
similar. Yes, they
do.
I'm the only one who's aged.
I know. Yeah, I don't. It doesn't seem quite fair to me, but it's good for the show. You worked now in those 8 years, as you mentioned, between Girls Weekend and Girls Weekend 2. Karen Schaeffer has been a very busy writer and has done a number of different kinds of plays, different genres. But you've also stayed involved with her writing along the way, haven't you?
Right. And so I serve as her editor and somewhat as a dramaturg for her. She actually has, in the last, I'm going to say in the last 18 months, premiered 3 shows.
That's amazing.
Amazing.
That's extraordinary for any playwright. In 18 months to have 3 premieres, that's like, Lauren Gunderson territory.
Well, it is. And it's interesting you should mention her, because that's that's someone who Karen follows in terms of her career arc. But in editing that first play, I gained kind of an interest in editing. And now I work for the American Association of Community Theater with their new Play Fest contest. And I work with now playwrights all over the nation to edit their work and help them bring their shows to fruition with other theaters. And so in working with Karen, I got a brand new skill set and able to parlay that into yet another iteration of my career. And it's made me very interested in the structure of plays. So
yeah,
I'm very, very fortunate to have worked with her.
Yeah. One of the hardest things to find is an artistic director is a comedy. If you can find a comedy that's funny, that's extraordinary. To find a farce that functions at this level. Go ahead.
Right. And a farce has to make the audience believe that they're smarter and yet prove to them that they are not.
Yes.
It's a delicate little cha-cha. And I always say, and yet there's, you have to fall down. It has to be funny in that regard too. There has to be a little schadenfreude going on there. So I always say that my training for farce was at the foot of the Three Stooges, Bugs Bunny, and the Marx Brothers.
Absolutely. I mean, as far as the masters of the form go, those are some of the all-time greats. Throw in Lucille Ball, and you've got some epic models to work from. It also has to have a controlled release of information, as you were saying, mentioning about making the audience feel like they're smarter, but proving they're not. You've got to have a really tight control of structure, which one of the things that was impressive about Girls Weekend is that to come out of the gate as a playwright with a farce, first of all, tightly controlled, tightly crafted. It was just a really remarkable debut performance. What about the sequel builds on or tops that first play?
Okay, Tiffany Flory is a new addition to this
Mhm.
cast. She is a sidekick for Sheriff Tom Lane, Officer Casburn. And one of the things that she said is, I am looking to blend in with this cast, but I want to be unique and funny and memorable as well. And then we talked about the ways in which the play needs to stand alone, but needs to also be a reward for people who remember Girls Weekend.
Yeah.
So we have to make sure that every piece of information that comes could be isn't dependent upon your knowing the play that came before. It's a
So you can see this
standalone.
one without knowing anything about the first one, and you're still going to have a great time.
Right, right. But we want to throw in some things that are uh, homages to the other productions. So, for example, um, one of the conceits of the first one was that the men were sent off into the night and were going to sneak back to the cabin because the women on the inside would flash the lights 3 times, right? And someone said to Karen afterwards, why didn't you just have them text? Because they had cell phones. And she said,
Right.
well, but it's part of the play. Yeah. But in this one, the men suggest, why don't you flash the porch light 3 times? And the ladies say back, why don't I just text you? So it's kind of a nod to the first one, but it isn't a joke that's dependent upon the first one. So those people who said to Karen, why don't you just have them text, will finally get their wish. Yeah.
I love there's a metatextual level of that. It's
Oh
incorporating
yeah, it's
critique into your
and
own
and
sequel.
and it's so funny to go meta with comedy. But the other important thing about farce is that if you set up a joke too soon, it doesn't have the same resonance as if you set it up like 4 pages in advance.
Mm.
So 4 pages out, the prop lands where it needs to, so that the person who discovers it is not just walking over to something that was just set there.
Yes, gotcha. Give the
It's a
audience
whole
enough time
formula.
to forget
It's a
about it.
Yeah, and it's a formula. It's more of a formula than anything else, but it's based on nanoseconds of timing.
Mm.
Nanosecond.
Great. Um, what is it that you most want people to know about this play?
I think it's a play that you come in and, my goodness, after all that we've been through with COVID and in staying away from the theater, it's a play where you can get your glass of wine, come in, and just depend on laughing. But the important part is that nobody has to laugh at somebody being made the fool. All right. So
That's really
Karen,
key.
right. So Karen's point in putting all this together was to give roles to women so that women are at the focus of the story. But in most farces, men have fun at the expense of women. That women have to be very, very short sighted or even stupid to not realize what's going on. I
Right.
mean, that's classic. That's French farce that goes all the way back to Moliere. But Karen wanted to make a farce that was more dependent upon missed opportunities and not maybe not seeing what was right in front of you, but not because you're stupid, but because it could be missed by any human being. So nobody has to be the fool. Nobody has to be stupid. There are things that make us look silly, but it's because of the circumstances, not because someone is inherently, you know, less than.
It's situational rather than mocking.
Thank you. Yes, I could have said it much
Yeah.
shorter than that. You're absolutely right.
So
And that, by the way, that is one of the reasons that Girls Weekend got published. It was
mm,
because we could say to dramatic publishing, "Hey, this is a farce different than others."
yep.
And Girls Weekend has had productions now in Canada, in Germany, in Australia, and all over the United
A
States.
debut play, not only published but productions internationally.
Right.
I mean, Germany and Canada count, right? They're not America.
No, and as a matter of fact, Australia was just recently.
Australia, right?
So
It's
right,
another
and so
continent. Well, so is Germany.
so they people are picking it up. So at first, what you do is you say to your friends, "Hey, there's this play, and I think it would go well in your season." And so your buddies in the in the Community Theater Association kind of pick up on it. And then you can't do anything more to be an agent for the play, and the play has to kind of exist on its own. And by that I mean people only can read a blurb in the catalog,
Yeah,
and then they have to order the play, and they have to decide to do it on their own. Well,
yeah.
that has happened, and it doesn't seem to be abating.
Well, and we at Iowa Stage didn't rely on a catalog since this is a premiere for Girls Weekend 2. We relied on what we knew about Karen and Girls Weekend 1 and your work that we could see, and we said we're definitely interested in this. This sounds like a fun one. The
Well, and is it your first modern farce?
Yeah, you can make me think. Yes. Yes, I would say so. I would say so. Yeah, we've
Okay, so Iowa Stage always breaking ground. I know you've done original work. I
yep.
know you've done comedy, and
This
maybe
is our
even
first
classic art.
this is our first non-musical world premiere. That's a weird way to say that, but the first thing that we did a world premiere of was a musical, and this is our
Mhm.
second world premiere, which we're really
Okay,
excited.
so part of the reason for having an Iowa Stage is for there to be a platform or a vehicle for seeing theater from a different perspective, from a new point of view, and to give challenge to actors who are arguably already at the top of their game. That doesn't mean we can't grow. As a matter of fact, the great thing about being an artist is being able to grow until the day that you perish, right? And
There's no
so,
ceiling on how much you can learn, how good you can get at this. There's no ceiling on it.
but if you're only doing things that are repeats of other things,
Mhm.
you don't. So this is Iowa Stage has always been that platform for actors and audiences to be able to stretch a bit and yet still be satisfied with a good product.
Wow, I so appreciate that. That's lovely of you to say, Kathy. And we appreciate you. The You mentioned the fact that this gives centers the stories of women, but specifically women in middle age, in the prime of life, women with adult children of their own, um, who are having their own entanglements, but we're not following. It's not the story of the 20 somethings. It's the story of the 50 somethings or 40 somethings who are, I don't actually remember what the ages are of everybody in the script, but there's a range of age. And I love that too, because that is particular a group that hasn't had enough stories told in the American theater in the canon as it currently exists. So it's I love that aspect of the play as well.
Yeah, and I think well Ellie is younger, and
Hmm.
but she's the one who reflects back to them when they're being a little bit stodgy in their interpretation of life.
Sure.
So it's that it's that sisterhood of women. And what I like are the scenes in which they're there on their own. So they're not
Hmm.
modifying or code switching for men. They're talking about what it is to have a baby and not being able to even use the restroom without having a child watching you.
Yeah.
That sort of frank sort of discussion that not many people outside of the gender are privy to.
Right. Right. And I love to talking about a farce of a different type. There's no villain really in
No.
this. There's no evil masher. There's no bad guy in this that we have to conspire against, which can be a great driver of farce as well. You think about something like a 9 to 5, right? That's got its own unifying against the evil boss, which is a great story in and of itself. But this is all this is a weird comparison, maybe, but it's something I've thought a couple of times. It's almost a little bit like Downton Abbey, not in the setting, in that it's generally the story of people doing their best and bumping up against each other in the process. So
Right. I believe the way I've positioned it to the actors is that they are all operating in earnest.
yes,
Right.
and
So in
nobody's
that
trying
way
to hurt
too,
other people, you know.
right. That way too, we step away from what would be the easy laugh. I always say that if you want to make anything funny, all you have to do is open your mouth afterwards. So if you say, "In the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Ghost," it becomes it becomes
See, it
funny.
works. It works.
Yeah, but it becomes funny, but only because of the facial expression that indicates that it's funny,
Right.
right?
Laugh here.
But that to me is like easy and cheap. If you operate in earnest, then it's all the situation, and that way too the audience can say, "Yep, that would have happened to me," instead of it happened to that goofy person that no one can stand to be around for more than 10 minutes.
Right. Like you
Yeah.
say, it's not because somebody's an idiot. It's because you're trying for this and you missed, or this is a compromising situation that anybody would be compromised in. It's
Right. Well,
marvelous.
and that being said, the situations do get more and more fantastical and improbable. Uh, what is it? Probable impossibilities.
Right.
That sort of thing. It does grow and grow and grow to the point of ridiculousness, but only in terms of that which is very, very funny. It's like it pushes the edges of
Right.
credulity.
Right. Well, it's a wonderful show with a great creative team. We're really lucky to have you coming
Oh,
up to
thanks.
direct this. It's been exciting for us. So, anything else you want to let folks know about?
No, I guess it's just that you've got a local talent in Karen Schaeffer who is now representing Iowa to the rest of the world, and she is now debuting another piece right at your doorstep. Shame on you if you don't come. This is going to be fun and funny and part of the Iowa experience that you just can't get anywhere else. I traveled all the way up here from Florida just to have this experience. So come on board, be a part of what all of this is. Iowa Stage is unique. Karen Schaeffer is unique. This
Very
group of
much.
people is unique. All we're missing is you.
Absolutely right. Well, tickets are on sale, iowastage.org. Uh, Kathy, thank you so much for all your work on the show. Thank you for your time this morning. And we are excited to see people at the theater.
Okay, and I'm glad to be here, Matt. Thank you very much for asking.
Absolutely. Take care.
Bye bye.